Hello, everyone, and welcome to my podcast, Senior to Seniors, where I dive into the stories of seniors, explore their unique experiences, discuss the real issues facing seniors today, and introduce you to those assisting seniors in their senior journey. I have the privilege to talk with some of the most interesting people in the world impacting the senior community today. My name is Jim Mazziotti. I've been a realtor for 33 years and am a national speaker, real estate coach, and I'm an author. My goal is to pay it forward to those I work with. So, welcome to Seniors, Mark OELZE. I'm so glad you're with us.
Thank you, Jim. This is an honor for me, and I'm grateful. I've had some delightful conversations already with you, so I'm looking forward to our time together today.
We have, and for the audience, Mark and I met about a month ago or so, and talked a little bit about what we wanted to talk about on this podcast. But Mark, I first met you in October. We met in Wichita, Kansas, at a seniors conference that we were both attending, and I was caught up uh, in visiting with you for two reasons. First of all, I love books. I'm an author myself and was interested in the book that you had written. I was also interested by your last name, as you
Hmm.
might remember, because OEL of your last name, OELZE, are the first three letters of the community I was raised in Iowa called Owine. So it's the only one. I don't know of any other communities that start with OEL. And actually, I don't know that I've talked to any other person whose last name starts with OEL. So
I'm not
when,
sure I remember you telling me that, Jim. How do you spell the? Oh, what did you what was the
yeah,
community name?
the name of the community is Owine. It's a German family name, Oelwein. And
Wow.
so when we were at the conference and I saw you from across the room and saw your chart and all that, I was taken by the chart. And then when I got closer to you, I thought, oh my God, we were meant to be connected because your your last name is similar to my hometown where I was
Oh,
born
that's
and raised.
great. I don't.
Yeah.
That's way fun. That's cool.
Yeah, but I love books, and
Hmm.
you were at the conference, and we talked a little bit about your book. And as I bought a book and brought it home, and while I was reading it, I was thinking, how can I apply this to the people that I work with, to this, especially to the senior community in which I mostly engage. But first, before we get started, I just want to tell people a little bit about you rather than that personal side, so they know who you are and a little bit about your accomplishments. Mark OELZE has been a marriage and family counselor for 30 years, helping couples process conflict in a manner that is governed by love. Mark is also an author, and he is not just an author, he's a visionary whose latest book, Pledge, is making waves in the literary world. In this gripping narrative, Mark explores themes of commitment, resilience, and the transformative power of promises kept. With a background that bridges diverse fields, Mark brings a unique perspective to his writing that resonates with readers from all walks of life, including seniors. His ability to weave compelling stories with profound insights is nothing short of remarkable. So whether you're an avid reader, a budding writer, or someone looking for inspiration, you won't want to miss this conversation that I have with Mark. So get ready for an insightful journey as we uncover the inspiration behind Pledge and dive into Mark's creative process. So, Mark, tell us a little bit about Pledge. Tell us about your book and how did you get there? How did you decide to write about Jake and Lisa, the subjects of your book?
Sure. Thanks, Jim. Yeah. So, as you said, I've been doing marriage counseling for quite a long time. Worked with a lot of couples, spent hours and hours, hundreds and even thousands of time with couples right in front of me, Coming in, 4 out of 5 of them say they struggle with communication. They say that within the first minute or two that I see them. And then I would watch them try to have a dialogue. And immediately I would say in my head, yeah, they do. They don't know how to communicate. And I would watch this over and over and over again. I mean, hour after hour after hour. And it wasn't before too long that I just began noting similarities in what one party or the other party would do that ended up derailing their conversation. They're going along a certain direction. They want to go from here to here, but they can't get there because here, one of them did a misstep, right? Or they did something, acted in something way, said something, responded a certain way, and it got them off track. Not off track in the sense of, oh, we're just onto another subject, although that would happen too. But it literally derailed the conversation in such a way it was like a crash, right? So they would have conflict right there in front of me then, and it would escalate right then and there. And I began watching what they were doing consistently and just through observing what it was, and then also paying attention to my wife and I. My wife and I have been married, this last December, we were married 43 years. And I remember one night, this is probably 15, maybe 20 years ago, I went upstairs because my office is right down here attached to my home. Went upstairs and I talked to my wife and I said, honey, I think we do this conflict conversation thing well, at least better than most people that I see. And I said, let's think a minute. What is it that we do that helps us? And I compared those notes, so to speak, with what I'd been observing over and over again of as far as the derailing process, and came up with a 6-step process to help us to get from here to here in a good way, in a strong way, in a healthy way. And we use pledge as the acronym of those 6 steps.
Yeah, it's a great acronym. And for me, as I was reading, I was thinking from the business side of pledge, because I don't think it's inconceivable that the 6 steps to peace and connection that you have in pledge can correlate in the business world as well. So not only do I think your pledge connects with the seniors that this audience is speaking to and with, I think it goes outside of that in many ways. So you say in your book that many people shy away from conflict. It's just easier, right? In business, in relationships, you shy away from conflict. So in your experience, what are the main reasons do you think individuals resist confronting issues head on?
Well, you said, first of all, Jim, I think it's easier. Like you say, I just think it's easier to get into the mud. Let's just stay out of the mud, right? Let's just
Hmm.
skirt around the issue as best we can, but don't go in. So I think
Yeah.
on some level, it's just that it's easier. Perhaps though, what we might further that idea, it's easier um, than getting in to something that we don't know how to get out of then, right? Because very few of us grew up in a home or had significant relationships around us growing up where we would watch them engage in a conflict with someone and it turn out well. Most of the time, I mean, every time I can ever think of somebody in conflict myself growing up, it was horrible.
Hmm. Hmm.
When I was in conflict, it was horrible. I've been yelled at. I've been hit in the nose in a conflict when I was in middle school. Uh, I remember. And again, honestly, I can't say that I ever remember anyone having a good conversation and me learning from it or from somebody sitting down and kind of walking me through the process and saying, when you have a conflict, this is what to do and how to have a conversation to work through it. I never had that.
Hmm.
My sense is very, very, very few people have ever had anything positive like what I've just described. So we're all in the same boat. We don't know what to do. So it's easier not to get into it because we don't know we're not sure how we're going to get out. And second of all, it's just scary.
Yeah.
It's just downright scary. Again, when I've been in conflict situations, it's frightening. My anxiety goes up. My defenses go up. It's frightening.
Yeah.
And so
Well, and
avoid.
when we're young, like you described, usually what we hear is, just get over it, shake hands and get over it. But we don't get over it, and neither do couples get over it. They might, because it's easier, might not engage, but having some kind of formula, I think, really speaks well to those things that we haven't ever really been trained. And so in your book, and let me just hold this up here because this is the book for those that will want to grab a copy. It's on Amazon. It's called The Pledge of a Lifetime. And you can grab it on Amazon. It's by Mark OELZE. And
Mm,
in your book, you talk about a specific success story, if you will, or a story that has a cast of Jake and Lisa. Can you talk about maybe that story or other maybe stories that you might have had in your business over the years that led to significant transformation for people in relationships using the pledge process?
sure, I can do a couple of things. Jake and Lisa is, the couple in the book. They're a composite of all of the couples that I've worked with, and over and again, when I have people read my book, they say, "Oh, wow, that sounds like me." Well, it's probably the case because it is you in a very real way. And in the story, they learn the six-step process and begin to apply it. They learn half of it, and they go to a counselor because they're having difficulties in their marriage. They go to a counselor, and he begins to teach them the pledge talk process. And they get halfway through, session's over. They got to come back the next week, but between that session and the next session, they have a big conflict, and they're doing everything they can to figure it out, trying to use the principles, failing at first, and then coming back around to seeing the benefit of using them in the right way. They come back, they learn the rest of it, and it's life changing, as it is, I think, for anyone and everyone that learns the process. I don't know what stories to go to. I'll tell you another one real quick. Later, I'll tell you one about my own father and I, a story that has to do with this, maybe after we share the six principles a little bit.
Yeah,
But
great.
another one, I was teaching several men this process. Men who had come and, basically said, we want to learn, we want to figure this thing out. So I was working with about six men and taught them the process, spent about an hour and a half to 2 hours with them, teaching it to them. And 2 weeks later, the man emails me and says, man, I can't believe this. He said, I went home, really thought a lot about what you taught, began practicing with my wife. And in fact, it was helpful that very like next day, right? We never know when conflict's going to happen. It just does.
Mhm.
And how much better it would go if we were prepared ahead of time, knowing that we're going to experience it sometimes. So he said it was immensely helpful immediately with his relationship with his wife. And then he and they began teaching it to their kids. And he said, Mark, you wouldn't believe this, but a week later, my 8-year-old son came in from playing outside and said, Dad, I've been teaching that pledge stuff to my friend, and it's been really helpful.
Amazing. That pledge
So
stuff, the pledge stuff, huh?
yeah. So it's cool. You'd alluded to something. I teach this largely to my couples or when I do some training elsewhere, but it's for anyone. You could use it in the business world. Absolutely. Use it with children. We have a family that we know of. They have 5 kids, and all 5 kids know this super well, and they use it all of them together with each other, siblings and as a family. Or you can use it again, even with your own parents, again, as I've shared like with my own father. So
Yeah.
and anyone can use it anywhere because we all communication is a critical part of life everywhere we turn.
Hmm. Exactly. Well, let's touch on it. Could we do that? Could we look at the 6 steps to what you call the 6 steps to peace and connection, the pledge talk? And of course, I am using what you provide inside the book, and also that I grab from the table as well, where you talk about the 6 steps. Do you want to go through those, or how do we
That's
touch on
perfect.
this?
Let's do that.
The Okay, so the first, when you talk about conflict, the first action that
Mhm.
you have that someone might take is to pause. Do you want to talk about pausing?
So, one little thing extra to say here for the moment is keep in mind, I usually spend about an hour teaching this
Okay.
minimally, right? Hour and a
Mm-hmm.
half. So we're going to go through it pretty quickly. But there's going to be a lot of nuances that we don't quite catch. But if a person were to get my book and read that, they'll pick up
Exactly.
a lot of the extras. So yeah, what I say all the time is when we find ourselves in a conflict, and I say it that way, when you find yourself there, because it's again, you don't wake up in the morning thinking, I'm going to have a conflict today. Let's do this.
Sure.
No, it just happens. You find yourself there. And my first tip or coaching tip is when you find yourself there, hit the pause button. Just say, if you can, like if Jim and you and I were in a conflict, I would say, I was just suddenly aware, right? Because maybe I reacted to something you said. Maybe I
Mm-hmm.
noticed a tone in my voice. Maybe I sensed you being defensive for some reason, or maybe a little hurt or angry, right? We just sense something's not quite right. And what I want to suggest is it's because right then and there, we're in conflict. And what I want to suggest is the first thing we do is we hit the pause button. And so we simply say, you and I might say, Jim, let's just hold on a second. Let's just stop. Let's just pause a moment. Right. And we do that for several reasons. One is we have to dial down our emotions. Right. There's a PET scan that shows that when our emotions are real high, the rational part of our brain literally shuts down. It's there. And so we've said or have heard it said, I was so angry I couldn't even think straight. Well, the reality is that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Emotions are that high, you literally cannot think, if at all, certainly not clearly, because the rational part of the brain has shut down. So we need to pause to dial down our emotions if we hope at all to be able to have some kind of a decent conversation about what just happened. Okay, so dial down our emotions.
Okay.
Then we need to also there's work we need to do personally while we're pausing, right? One of the things is I might need to remind myself this is Jim, my new friend. I like Jim. I'd like to keep the friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Tell myself that, right? Then I might also remind myself I don't know what just happened. I have my own thought about what happened, but Jim has his thought also about what happened. There's a story in his head about what went down, and there's a story in my head about what went down. And I need to get to a place where I'm able and willing and ready to hear your story. Because here's the problem. We're in a conflict, and what do? We become demanding. We say,
Mm-hmm.
listen, I don't know what you're thinking, but you're wrong. This is the way it is, and you need to listen. You need to hear me out, or just all right, Rado, forget her. Forget it, and we just walk off because we're insistent and we're demanding our way's the right way, and so forth. And instead, we need to come to a place where there's a shift in our thinking and even in our heart, where we say, I don't know what happened. Jim matters to me, and I want to find out from him.
Mm.
Why,
Yeah.
why, why is he reactive, defensive, angry, hurt, pulled back? I don't know what it is. I'll just mention that. You seem defensive. You seem angry. Tell me what's going on.
Yeah. So it's count to 10, right? Count to 10 and think and just think about what was going on and be concerned for what your position is.
Yeah.
Great. That
And or again, and then what the other person's
uh,
position. Yeah, yeah. And it
got
might
it.
take only 10 seconds, could take 30 seconds, could take 30 minutes
Hmm. Well, and
until
some, yeah, and sometimes, for me in business, it's even been receiving, for instance, an email, and then getting on my computer and doing this, and there it is, hit the send, and you don't get it's out, right? So
mm,
I try to do this and then stop and sometimes just wait a couple hours and then rethink the position. So whether it's like face to face or even an email or a text, because those things are instant, they cause so much damage, right? Good. So pause first. I got that.
so once I sense, at least I'm ready to come back to the table to listen.
Hmm.
And if you understood the process too, maybe you'd say, yeah, I'm willing to do the same. We come back to the table, move to the next step, which is listen. Pause, listen, or PL. And so I might just volunteer to listen first. And I say, again, Jim, I don't know what happened back then, but I'd like to know. Tell me what's up. So I put myself in the listening position. Okay.
Hmm.
I want to hear and understand what it is you want me to understand. The problem with in listening is most of us listen only for what it is that we think is wrong in what the other person is saying. So as soon as we can grab the microphone, we'll point out everything wrong that the other person said. And we'll argue till we're till our deathbed. I listened. I really listened. And I did, but I listened for the wrong things.
Hmm.
Jim, I need to listen to understand what is it that you want me to understand about what happened back there. And when I finally do think I understand, oh, I have that. Oh, that's what Jim is saying. Oh, that's why he seemed angry. I think I understand now. When I come to that understanding, then I move to the next step, which is to echo, pause, listen, echo. Then I echo back what I think it is you've said. Why? Because I want to make sure that I've heard. And I want to help you know that I've heard. And that I'm not, throwing in my own interpretation, but I want you to know that I listened so well that I can even tell you what I hear you saying. So that you know that I understand what it is you
Yeah,
want
because
to
we
hear.
all want to be heard. We all want to be heard, right?
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And
Got
then
it.
once you say, oh, if I say, is that right? Is that what you said? And you say, yeah, that's right. Then I move on to the next step, which is to D, which is disarm the tension between us by validating what it is that you said. Because here's the deal. I'll tell my wife or I'll tell a friend uh, why I was upset, why I was frustrated. And they may say, okay, so you were frustrated because of that. And I go, yes, that's right. That's exactly right. And they go, okay. There's a part of me that is saying, okay, they get it, but do they think I'm stupid for thinking that way? Do they think
Hmm.
I'm crazy? You know? And I'm wondering myself. So I had this reaction because of this and this and this, and that's why I was feeling what I was. And then I'm explaining to you that's what it was. And do you get it? Yeah, I get it. Do you think I'm crazy? We've all had that thought in our
Hmm.
head. And
Exactly.
I'm wanting someone to say, no, you weren't crazy. I can see your perspective. I see why you're upset. It makes sense. Just a little phrase. That makes sense.
Hmm.
See why you thought the way you did or felt the way you did. The validating just lowers the tension. It disarms the tension between us. We both go, yeah. So there's pause, listen, echo, disarm, the first four steps of pledge. Okay.
Okay.
Now it's very critical because at this moment, I have to do one more, take one more little step. I have to get quiet because most of us, if we get that far at all or validate, we might say something like, "Oh, okay, I get it. It makes sense. But,"
Yeah, but
and as soon as I say, but, I just invalidated everything I just validated. Right. And we've all done that.
mhm, mhm,
We've all used the but word at times when it wasn't helpful. And we've
mhm.
been butted by others as well. And as soon as we have, again, everyone is, it's like a universal reaction. When someone says but, we roll our eyes. We have that sense that they don't really get it. So all I can do is really, I say, Jim, that makes sense. I understand why you're upset now. That was helpful. Thanks for sharing. That makes sense. And I get quiet. All I can do is get quiet. And as I get quiet, something goes on inside of you. The settling that started when I validated goes further down. The tension releases even more. And you find yourself thinking in your head, I think he really does get it. I'm not crazy. He says it makes sense. Oh, this feels so good. And I would say you feel like to me, like you feel like you matter to me. You feel like I was caring. And in my language, in different ways, I would say sometimes even that you felt loved by me. If I take the kind of care that I'm talking about in
Mhm.
our interaction. So we're down to pause, listen, echo, disarm, the fourth step. The fifth step is once if I get quiet, the natural thing is most natural thing is once I get quiet and things settle in you, the tendency is on the other would be on your part to say, Mark, do you have any thoughts? Do you have anything? Can you tell me what was going on your side? And the role switch. Now you give, which is G, the fifth step. Now you give me a chance to share from my perspective what went on back then. And the role switch, and you now remain in a pause mode so you don't interrupt me. You listen, you echo, and you disarm any further tension between us by validating my perspective as well. And we might engage this process over and over a few times till we find real resolve or come back to a much better place relationally between us. And that's the last step, to engage that process again and again.
So you use this and have used it for years in your practice. How do you find that it works, and how does it impact not only couples but reach beyond just couples and into communities and into businesses? How have you seen it work in ways that you maybe never imagined, when your wife and yourself were discussing this, and hopefully she's getting half of all the royalties of your book and speaking engagements because half of it's her idea. Um, how do you find this has impacted your life and your business?
Sure, sure. I would like to give you all kinds of amazing, huge, big, successful stories.
Yeah.
Uh, I would say I know of some, partially is because I've done most of the work that I've done is with couples in my office. I have taken this to a number of places. I've probably taken it to a dozen churches, like in a Friday night conference or Friday night, Saturday, something
Okay.
like that. But unfortunately, I don't get to hang around long enough to hear of the way it's impacted them and so forth. I hear stories periodically. Somebody will come up to me every once in a while. And somebody came up to me a while ago and said, he said, hey, you're that pledge guy, aren't you? Because he had heard me at some conference, and he was obviously remembering the concepts and stuff. That was fun. That was encouraging. Uh, and I've gone to a few businesses, and there's a large business here in town called Textron. You might have heard of something like that.
Yeah.
There's a gal who heard me teach this, and she is kind of up there in leadership, and she
Hmm.
has taken, the one-page infographic like this and pinned it up everywhere she can, all around her office area. So they're all using Pledge together. So I know things like that are happening. And just most recently, we are looking at trying to find a few churches or organizations that would say we want you to come and just spend time with us in an ongoing fashion, that you could just change the culture. And we have a couple organizations right now there we're just beginning to work with. So I'm hoping to have some neat stories more towards the middle or end of this year,
Yeah.
and how it could more significantly, lastingly change the culture. It totally makes sense to me if you have a business, an organization, a church, that if everyone in the organization understood the concepts together, they all had the same language and the same commitment to a process, right? It stands to reason to me that you could only you can only go upwards. You only could benefit, the chance to benefit immensely, because it changes our conversations,
Hmm.
and in more so, particularly, it changes our conflict conversations. And notice I like to call them conflict conversations rather than arguments. But if we all know the same concepts and are committed to it, and committed to the underlying premise of it, that ultimately, I tell people, ultimately, what I'm teaching people is not even to resolve conflict, but I'm ultimately teaching people how to love well in the way you communicate.
Mm. Say that again. Say that again.
Yeah. So ultimately, I teach this most often in the context of a conflict, how to use the sequence of steps in a conflict conversation. But ultimately, what I'm teaching people to do is I'm teaching people how to learn how to love well in the way they communicate. My point being, one of the things I tell people as I work with them is again, even though I teach this in the context of a conflict, don't don't walk away with the idea that again, you take my book, you pull it off the shelf, next Friday night when you have that conflict. No, take my book, learn the six principles, and begin using those principles every day in every conversation.
Yeah.
And when you do, you're going to find your richer conversations, stronger connections, and people feeling like they really matter to you. And ultimately, they're going to feel like they're loved.
That's exactly how I saw it, as I
Mm.
was reading it, that it was way beyond. It was, way beyond Jake and Lisa. It was way beyond any other couple. And that's why I believe it's so important, not only for couples, but for businesses.
Yeah.
And
Well, like you
well,
said, we all want to be heard, and we all want to know we matter, whether it's your customer, okay?
Mhm, mhm.
They want to know that they really matter, whether it's somebody you're working with or on a team, right? If everybody on the team knows they matter, and you matter to them, it can only be something that just helps immensely in the organization.
Yeah. Well, Mark, I want people to know that how to get the book. I want to emphasize again, your book is available. I don't even know what I just did with it. It's down here. Here we go. The Pledge of a Lifetime
Yeah.
by, and it's available on Amazon. People can reach out to you um, in many different ways. First of all, your website is www.pledgetalk.com. They can go to your Facebook page. You're on Facebook at Pledge Talk, www.facebook.com/Pledge Talk. And you're available for trainings and for speaking events. You're in Wichita, Kansas. Um, perhaps we can even get you here somehow, some way in Texas to talk to the seniors that, I personally in my business and so forth. But it goes so far beyond just Wichita, Kansas and Dallas, Texas. And for that, I hope people will reach out to you and read your book. What's next for you, Mark? Are you continuing to write? What's next for you?
I have two or three more books that I would like to write. It's a time thing trying to figure that out. I enjoyed writing more than I realized. And I liked writing in the form that I did in a narrative, and I probably would continue to do the same. But I'd like to write, this book that I wrote is specifically for married couples. I'd love to write a book about how this could impact an organization. Again, even as I've described, if everybody in the
Yeah.
organization. So I'd love to write a book on that. The other, I also mentioned, we're looking for organizations where we could get in and go deep and help them to really change the culture. But the other project that I've been working on for several years now, I started it during COVID, was I've created an online learning platform. And I did a lot of work, and then it kind of went dormant for a bit, and I'm about to pick that back up again, do a little more fine tuning of it, and through that, my hope is to offer coaching opportunities for people anywhere in the country or world even who learn this and they want to go deeper. Because again, the reality is the 6 steps are in and of themselves, they're huge and they're critical. If you, I think they're critical if you really want to learn how to have healthy conversations, period, and then especially conflict conversations. Again, they're not 6 steps that I just made up out of the blue and I'm trying to get everybody to do what I want them to do. These are the steps that people were not doing that derailed the conversations. So
Hmm.
I just said, no, these are the steps that when you take them, they're going to move you from here to here, right? So people need to, my heart and passion is to help people learn what that sequence is and to begin to take them. But then there's a lot of nuances. So you can pick up the book, go to my website and watch the video series there. And you will learn a lot. People watch the video series on our website, and it's highly practical. And it's a free series, by the way. It's highly
Okay.
practical and they start running with this until they have some hiccups. And I would like to provide a place for them where they can come and get answers for the extra challenges that they face when they're doing their part to implement this, but questions arise. That's what I'm hoping to really ramp up here with the online learning platform.
Well, I would love for people to at least grab a copy of your book, and I'd love for people to come to your place so they can learn so much more. Mark, I've loved spending time with you, and perhaps we can spend some more time on another podcast because I learn from you every time we talk. And I want to thank you for being here. And best to you. I appreciate you.
And thank you so much. This has been a great time. Thank you.
Hey, thank you to my listeners. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button, like button, and reach out to me if you have any questions for Mark. And I'd love to get those questions to him, and perhaps Mark can help you as he's helped me. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.